UPSC aspirins. Imagine this. Okay. Before the 1860s, going under the knife, it was basically a death sentence. Almost a 50-50 chance you wouldn't make it out of surgery alive just from infection. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't fancy those odds. Then comes along this guy, Joseph Lister, and boom, revolutionizes the entire field.
Yeah, and you know what's really interesting about Lister's story, as the Hindu highlights, it's not just about a medical breakthrough. It really showcases what happens when someone challenges, those really deeply ingrained beliefs and pushes for progress, sometimes even when everyone else is pushing back.
Yeah, totally. So before we get into the nitty-gritty, who was this guy before he became like the father of antiseptic surgery?
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of kid grows up to tell like the whole medical establishment that they've got it all wrong?
Well, young Joseph, he had a little bit of a head start, I guess you could say. His father, a successful wine merchant, but also an amateur scientist, especially fascinated by microscopes, which back then were pretty cutting edge stuff.
So instead of, learning the family business, he's off peering down a microscope. Interesting.
Exactly. And, this early exposure to scientific observation, I think it was crucial. It really fostered that sense of curiosity and this belief in the power of looking beyond just what's right there on the surface. And you have to remember, like, back then, most people, even doctors, they believed in the miasma theory.
The miasma theory.
Remind me what that is again.
Thinks bad smells equal disease.
Mm-hmm.
So people believed that illness, especially those infections that were rampant in hospitals, were caused by, foul air.
Yeah.
And so the solution was to like mask the smell or just air out the rooms.
Yeah, not exactly an effective strategy, huh?
No, not at all. And really challenging that deeply rooted belief in miasma. That was a huge hurdle for Lister. But thankfully, his upbringing, all that scientific influence, especially from his father, it really equipped him to think differently, to question, what everyone else just accepted as fact. Okay, so armed with his trusty microscope and a healthy dose of skepticism, where did Lister's path lead him? Straight to med school, I imagine.
He did indeed. And not only did he study medicine, he excelled at it. Graduated with honors and quickly, rose through the ranks. He even secured a prestigious position at the Edinburgh Royal Infirmary. And get this, he married the daughter of his surgical mentor.
Ooh, talk about a power couple. But wait, wasn't Edinburgh kind of notorious for hospital disease back then?
Oh, absolutely. Just picture it. You're this brilliant young surgeon working at one of the most advanced hospitals at the time, but almost half of your patients are dying from infections after surgery.
That's got to be demoralizing.
It was, and this is where the story gets really interesting. Despite all his success, Lister was deeply troubled by this hospital disease, what we now call sepsis.
So what did he do? I mean, he didn't just give up, did he? This is Joseph Lister we're talking about.
He did not. He started questioning everything. He was convinced that there had to be a better explanation for these post-operative infections than, just bad air. And that's when the work of a certain French chemist caught his eye.
You're talking Louis Pasteur, right? The germ theory guy. Okay, things are about to get good.
That's right. Louis Pasteur and his germ theory, it was groundbreaking stuff, even controversial at the time. It's a huge shift, going from blaming bad smells to understanding that these microscopic organisms were the real problem behind infection.
Okay, but how does a French chemist's theories end up influencing a Scottish surgeon? Did they even meet or anything?
No, they didn't actually. But Lister, he was an avid reader of scientific literature. And when he came across Pasteur's work, it was a real light bulb moment. It finally explained why his patients were still getting infected, even in a brand new surgical block at the Glasgow Royal Infirmary, where he had recently moved. It clearly wasn't just the air.
So he finally had his answer. But what could he do about it? Invisible germs? How do you even fight that?
Lister knew he needed to kill these microorganisms somehow, and his solution, it came from a pretty surprising source, actually. Sewage treatment.
Wait, what? Sewage?
Yep. He learned that carbolic acid was being used to, deodorize sewage, basically killing the bacteria that was causing the stench. And he thought, what if I try applying this to surgery? What if I can create a germ-free environment?
So he's taking an idea from sanitation and applying it to surgery.
Mm-hmm.
That's some outside-the-box thinking.
Exactly. And that's a key takeaway for our UPSC aspirants listening in. Innovation often comes from connecting these seemingly different fields right, finding inspiration where you least expect it. Just imagine the kind of policies you could come up with if you could bridge the gap between, say, rural development and technology.
That's a great point. So Lister's got his weapon, carbolic acid. What next? Does he just start, dousing patients with it?
Not quite. He was methodical, and more than anything, he was committed to really proving his theories. So he started using this carbolic acid solution to clean wounds and surgical instruments, trying to create this sterile environment before, during, and after surgery. His first antiseptic surgery was in 1865, and importantly, he really meticulously documented his methods and all of his results.
He was collecting data, building up his case. Smart move.
Absolutely. He understood how important evidence-based practice was, especially when you're challenging the norms, and the results, they were dramatic. He saw a huge drop in those post-operative infections and mortality rates. He even published his findings in The Lancet, one of the most prestigious medical journals at the time.
Okay, so he's got the data, it's published in a top journal case, closed, right? I mean, everyone must have jumped on board with this whole antiseptic thing.
Oh, if only it were that easy. Remember, he was challenging centuries of accepted medical practice. Many surgeons, they just dismissed his ideas completely. They clung to that miasma theory, or they just resisted change altogether. Some even ridiculed him.
It's like telling experienced surgeons they've been doing it wrong their whole careers.
Like that.
Tough sell.
Yeah.
But Lister, he was persistent, right?
He was. He knew he was onto something, and he just refused to give up. He kept refining his techniques, gathered more evidence, kept publishing his findings. But what he really needed was an undeniable victory, a case so compelling that even his harshest critics couldn't ignore it. And that moment came in 1877.
Okay, 1877, this has got to be the big breakthrough we were talking about. What happened?
So Lister, he's at King's College London now, and he gets this opportunity to perform this really complex surgery, one that almost always resulted in a fatal infection, a fractured kneecap. Back then, it was basically a death sentence.
But Lister, he saw it as a chance to prove his point once and for all.
Exactly. He meticulously applied his antiseptic techniques, using that carbolic acid spray throughout the whole procedure. And you know what? The surgery was a success, but even more importantly, the patient fully recovered, no infection.
Wow, that's amazing. It's like something straight out of a medical drama. You know, the underdog surgeon proving everybody wrong. I bet even his biggest critics had to admit defeat after that.
It was a turning point for sure. This high-stakes surgery was such a positive outcome, it really silenced a lot of those doubters. Word spread pretty quickly after that, and more surgeons started adopting Lister's methods.
It's incredible how one successful surgery can change the course of medical history.
It really is. And it brings up a broader point, something worth thinking about, for those of you aiming for the IAS. Sometimes a single well-documented example, it can be way more persuasive than years of theoretical arguments. Data is important, of course, but a compelling story that can really shift public opinion and drive policy change.
That's a great insight. So Lister's finally getting the recognition he deserves. What happens next? Does he just retire?
Yeah.
Kick back and enjoy the accolades?
Not quite. He was far from finished. Lister continued refining his techniques, advocating for those antiseptic practices, and mentoring a whole new generation of surgeons. And his work, it wasn't just about carbolic acid. It was about establishing this fundamental principle of keeping surgical environments sterile. And as you know, that principle is still the cornerstone of modern surgery today.
Yeah, it's something we totally take for granted these days, right?
Yeah.
Clean hospitals, sterilized instruments, it all just seems so obvious. But someone had to fight for that to convince the world that these things actually mattered.
Exactly, and that's Lister's lasting legacy. He didn't just introduce a new technique, he completely changed the mindset of the entire medical profession. He helped shift the focus from treating infections after they happen to preventing them in the first place.
So for our UPSC aspirants listening in, what are the key takeaways from Lister's story?
Well, it's a testament to the power of scientific thinking, the importance of challenging assumptions, and the huge impact that one single person can have on global healthcare. Lister's journey, as described in the Hindu, it's a reminder that progress often requires a lot of courage, perseverance, and a willingness to go against the grain.
And let's not forget the value of thinking across disciplines, right? Who would have thought that sewage treatment would hold the key to revolutionizing surgery?
It's a great reminder that solutions can come from the most unexpected places. So keep those minds open, stay curious, and never underestimate the power of connecting seemingly unrelated ideas. That kind of innovative thinking, that's exactly what the UPSC is looking for.
This deep dive has been a fascinating journey through medical history. If you found it helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave us a comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts and answer any questions you might have. And of course, let us know what other topics you'd like us to explore in future deep dives. Until next time, happy studying.